The wind screamed across the frozen valley, carrying sharp flakes of snow that stung her bare arms and cheeks. Her legs were shaking. Her thin cloak was torn, soaked with blood and ice. Her name was Liari, and she had nothing left. Once she had walked the golden halls of her people's palace, head held high, wearing robes of silk and light. She had servants. She had guards. She had a future. Now, she was broken, hunted, and alone. Yari stumbled forward, each step harder than the last. The sun was low, turning the snow red like spilled blood. Her feet left trails behind her easy to follow, but she didn't care anymore. No one would come. No one ever came. Her people had sold her. The enemy had used her. She had escaped their prison ship 2 nights ago, hiding under dead bodies in the cargo bay she'd crawled out of. A pile of corpses to find herself on a cold world where no one would search for her. She reached the edge of a frozen cliff. Below, sharp rocks waited. Liari fell to her knees, her breath shaking in the air. Her body hurt, but her heart hurt more. She closed her eyes, whispering a final word in her own language, something like freedom. But in the distance, through her tears and snow, someone had seen her fall. A human. His name was Grant. He had been traveling through the ruins of an old outpost, searching for scraps and signals. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a hero. He was just a scout with orders to mark wreckage and avoid trouble. But when his scanner picked up a faint, irregular heat signature, he broke the rules. He moved fast, the snow crunching under his boots. The wind made it hard to see, but he saw the shape near the cliff, not a body, someone alive. Barely. He didn't hesitate, as Liari's body leaned forward, ready to let gravity take her. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. She gasped, eyes flying open in shock. She expected pain. She expected chains. Instead, she found warmth and a face she had never seen. Human. She tried to pull away, weak and confused, but her body failed her. The man wrapped his coat around her and spoke gently, even though she didn't understand his words. "Hold on, I've got you," he said. She looked up at him, her breath shaking. His eyes weren't cruel. They weren't cold. Why? No one had cared when she screamed inside that prison ship. No one had stopped them when they broke her bones and laughed. But this human, this stranger, had caught her before she could fall. "Why?" she whispered, the word barely forming. He didn't answer. He simply picked her up, careful not to hurt her more, and started walking away from the cliff. Her fingers clutched his coat without thinking. The snowstorm grew heavier. But he didn't stop. He carried her through the freezing wind, toward the mountains where he had hidden his small shelter. Every step he took sank deep into the snow, but he never let go. Inside her mind, Liari drifted in and out of darkness. She saw flashes his face, a light in the distance, heat on her frozen skin. Her last clear thought before sleep took her was strange. She wasn't dying. Someone had stopped her far behind them. A black ship flew low across the trees, searching for something. It had weapons, it had scanners, but it was too late. She was gone. Gone with a human who didn't ask who she was, what she had done, or why she had wanted to die. He only asked if she was still breathing. Back in the warmth of his camp, Grant placed her gently on the floor beside a heater. He checked her injuries, whispering soft things even though she couldn't hear them. He didn't know who she was. But when he saw the pain in her eyes, it didn't matter. She was alive. And she didn't want to be, but now maybe she would. The message on his wristband blinked again. "Do not engage hostile zone." But Grant didn't care. He had already broken the rules the moment he touched her. The shelter's heating unit hummed softly. It wasn't much, just metal. Walls, some blankets, a small heater, and a makeshift medkit. But to the alien girl lying quietly on the floor, it might as well have been heaven. Grant stared at her from across the room. She hadn't moved in hours. Her pale skin had strange glowing patterns across her neck and arms, symbols that pulsed like soft fire. She looked fragile, but something told him she had once been strong, maybe even royal. Her breathing was slow now, not from weakness, but from rest. He had stopped her fall, carried her through the snow, and now Now he didn't know what to do next. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a hero. He was just a scout from Earth, assigned to scan this abandoned planet and report back anything useful. But what he found wasn't junk. It was her. Back at command, the other humans were busy analyzing alien weapons and dead tech. No one cared about survivors, especially not one from a species they barely understood. Species that had once stood against the Union, but Grant had seen her eyes. And in those eyes, he didn't see an enemy. He saw someone who had lost everything. He turned away from the window and walked over to her. Gently, he checked the bandages on her arms. The burns were deep. Some old, some fresh. Someone had hurt her more than once. Her hands twitched when he touched her. She didn't wake, so he sat beside her and waited. Hours passed. Outside, snow piled high. The wind screamed as if searching for her, as if angry that she had survived. Suddenly her eyes opened. She gasped, her body flinching. She pushed herself up, trembling, her back against the wall. Her breath came. Fast, her eyes wide with fear. Grant raised his hands, slow and calm. "You're safe," he said, voice steady, even though she couldn't understand the words. "You're not alone." She stared at him, confused, cautious. Her lips moved, speaking her own language, but it was weak and broken. Still, he didn't move. He pointed to his chest. "Grant." She didn't respond. He pointed again slowly. "Grant." Her voice cracked. "Grant." A small nod. She hesitated, then touched her own chest. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mary." That was it. No need for ranks. No past, no reasons, just names. Two strangers in a storm. Liari looked around the room. There were no cages, no locks, no guards, just warmth, food, and him. She watched as he stood and brought a small pouch of water to her side. He didn't force it into her hands. He left it there, walked away, and sat across from her. She grabbed it slowly. She drank. He smiled once, then looked away, giving her space. No one had ever done that, not even when she had power. That night, she didn't sleep. She watched him as he worked on some small machine near the wall, using tools she didn't recognize. His movements were slow, careful, not like a soldier, but like someone who had built things instead of destroyed them. Liari wanted to ask why he saved her. She wanted to know what he wanted in return, but she was too tired to speak instead. She closed her eyes, not to die this time, but just to rest, while a human who broke the rules kept watch beside her, never turning his back. Far away, a signal pinged across a hidden channel. The enemies who once claimed her were looking again, searching and closing in. But they weren't the only ones preparing. This human, this lone, foolish man, was already making a plan. He didn't know what would come next. But if they came for her again, it'd have to go through him. Something was wrong. Liari's body didn't ache the way it had yesterday. Her skin no longer burned from the cold. There was heat around her, not from the sun, not from fire, but from something close, something alive. She opened her eyes. Quickly, ready to fight, ready to scream, but she didn't move. She froze instead. There, only inches from her, sat the human. He was asleep. His back rested against the shelter's wall, his arms folded across his chest, and a thick survival blanket stretched halfway over her, not him. The rest of the warmth she felt came from his coat, the one she now wore over her own torn clothes. He had given it to her, and he had taken nothing in return. No chains, no questions, no hands grabbing her like the ones she still saw in her. Nightmares, just quiet breathing and shared warmth. She looked at his face, tired, a scar on his chin. Bits of snow still caught in his dark hair. This was the same species her people once feared, the same species her commanders had warned her about. Unpredictable, dangerous, selfish, but this man had not looked at her like an object. He had not spoken with hunger or hate. He had only said his name, Grant, and then he had waited. Liari shifted slowly, testing her muscles. They still hurt, but less than before. The healing patch on her side was real. The bandages on her wrist were tight and clean. He had done it all while she slept. Her eyes moved to the corner of the shelter. There, on a metal plate, sat a small bowl of warmed food ration cubes, soft and steaming. And beside it, a folded cloth and water pouch. Carefully, silently, where she reached for the food, Grant opened one eye, not fully, just enough to see her move. He didn't speak. He didn't come closer. He just smiled barely, then closed his eyes again. Liari's heart raced. She had known men who smiled before hurting her. She had trusted his kindness once and paid with pain. But this was different. Quiet, steady. He had no weapon near him. He had given her all the warmth. And now he slept beside someone who could slit his throat in the dark. Either he was foolish, or truly unlike any male she had ever known. She ate slowly. Each bite felt strange. Her stomach still fought against the food, not trusting it. But hunger won. She finished everything. Then she pulled the coat tighter around herself and sat up straighter. Looking outside the small window, snow still fell. The storm hadn't ended, neither. Had her fear, she remembered what waited beyond the mountains. The ones who branded her, the ones who sold her, they would return. They always returned. She looked at the human again. Did he know the danger? Did he care? Why would someone risk everything for a stranger, a broken girl, a forgotten slave? She didn't have the answer. But she knew this. He hadn't touched her while she slept, and that meant more than anything. Grant finally stretched, his bones popping from the cold. She watched him silently. When he noticed her awake, he offered her another small smile and moved slowly toward the corner. He picked up a small metal device, twisted a knob, and checked the readings. He didn't ask how she felt. He didn't demand anything, but he said something soft, a short word in his own tongue. Then he handed her a small device, a translator. Chip Liari blinked. She had seen these before, in the hands of her enemies, used to interrogate and humiliate. But this one wasn't forced into her ear. He simply placed it beside her, then stepped back. He let her choose. She stared at it, unsure, then slowly picked it up and pressed it against her neck. The device blinked green. She took a breath. Then she spoke. "Why? Did you save me?" He turned toward her. His voice was low but calm, because no one else did. She didn't reply. She couldn't. The truth hit her harder than cold ever had. He didn't even know her, but he gave her food, warmth, and safety. No one had ever done that without expecting something dark in return. But this man, this human, had changed everything with one small act. And now, for the first time since her world burned, she didn't feel like dying. The walls shook as the wind roared louder than before. Snow slammed against the shelter like angry fists. And the sky outside had turned completely white. But the real storm wasn't outside. It was inside her. Liari sat curled under the coat, her knees to her chest, while the human worked silently by the power cell. He hadn't spoken since morning. He hadn't touched her. He just moved quiet, careful, and patient. She didn't know what he was fixing. Some broken circuit, maybe a power coil. She didn't care. What she cared about was the strange pressure growing inside her chest. She wasn't used to silence. Without fear, back in the slave camps, silence meant something bad was coming. Silence was followed by pain. Here, the silence was different. Heavy, but not cruel. She glanced at him. He hadn't looked at her once in over an hour, just focused on his tools, adjusting wires, watching readings on a cracked screen. Why wasn't he staring at her like others did? Why didn't he ask her to earn her food? Why wasn't he afraid of her kind? A sharp memory returned, sudden and brutal. Chains around her wrists. And gripping her neck. The cold laughter of those who thought she was nothing. Her breathing quickened. She wrapped the coat tighter around herself and shut her eyes, trying to block it out, but the ghosts didn't go. They never left. Her people had betrayed her. The enemy had broken her. And now, a human, a species once called monsters, was giving her peace she didn't know how to accept. Grant finally stood and stretched his arms. He looked toward the small window, nothing but a wall of snow. "We'll be stuck here a while," he said quietly, mostly to himself. Yari flinched at the sound of his voice. He noticed, but he didn't move closer. He didn't apologize. Just looked at her with calm eyes, like she wasn't a prisoner or a burden or a threat. "I have extra water if you're thirsty," he added. She nodded once. That was all. He slid a canister toward her without stepping close. Then he sat across the room, pulling out a ration bar and chewing slowly. The fire crackled low. The wind screamed again. But inside the shelter, the air between them grew warmer. And stranger. After some time, she spoke. "Why aren't you asking me anything?" Grant looked up. His eyes met hers. He wiped his hand and leaned back against the metal wall. "I figured you'd tell me when you're ready." "No one ever waits," she said. "I'm not everyone." That simple answer hit her like a stone to the chest. He wasn't everyone. Not the men who hit her. Not the buyers who bid on her. Not the guards who laughed when she cried. This man was something else, something dangerous in a new way. Because if she let herself believe him, she trusted again. And he turned out like the others. She wouldn't survive that. She stood up slowly, her legs still shaking, and walked to the heater. She held her hands close to the heat, then looked down at him. "You don't know who I am," she said. "No." He agreed. "I was important once. Royal blood. They called me Starborn Daughter on my world." Grant raised an eyebrow. "What do they call you now?" She was silent for a long time. Nothing. She finally whispered, "They took my name from me." He nodded. "Then take it back." "Ow!" She blinked. "What?" "You survived. You escaped. You're alive. You didn't fall off that cliff." Stood now, facing her fully. "You didn't die, so whoever they wanted you to be, that ends now." She stared at him. No one had ever said that before. She still felt cold inside, still broken, but somewhere under that, deep in the center of her chest, something warm flickered. Not from the heater, not from the coat, from his words, from the way he looked at her and saw more than a broken body. He saw a person. The storm outside howled louder, angry, wild, endless. But inside the shelter, she whispered her name again. "Liari," he smiled. "Good. Now I can stop calling you Hey." In my head, for the first time, a sound escaped her lips. A breathless, confused laugh. Small, but real. And in that moment, the storm inside her paused. Not gone, but quieter. The shelter's power flickered. Once, twice. Then the heater gave a soft warning beep. Grant stood quickly, moving to the control panel. "No damage," he muttered. "Just interference." But Liari wasn't looking at the panel. She was staring. At the window beyond the fogged glass, red lights blinked in the distance. She felt it in her chest. That cold, tight feeling she thought she had buried. "They found me," she whispered. Grant turned to her. "What?" She stepped back from the window, her face pale, eyes wide. "They're here." He looked again. 2 flashing signals. Cutting through the snow like red stars. Not local, not union, not friendly. Grant pulled his scope from his gear and peered through it. 3 figures moved through the snow, tall, armed, wearing black armor with jagged symbols. Liari knew too well. The same hunters who once branded her slaved. They weren't scanning the ground. They were following her footprints from 2 nights ago, heading straight for them. Grant lowered the scope. "They're coming slow." "Still far," he said. "We have to run," she said quickly. Grant shook his head. "In this storm, you won't make it 100 meters." She backed up, panic rising. Her eyes darted around the small space like a trapped animal. "They'll take me again," she said. "They always find me." He stepped closer, not to stop her, but to ground her. "Then we fight." She turned to him, confused. "You don't understand. They don't stop. They kill anyone who helps me." "I know," he said. "You'll die." He nodded. "Maybe. But they won't take you." Liari stood frozen. This human, this stranger, was choosing to stand between her and death again, for no reason, no reward, no debt, just choice. She felt her hand shake. Her voice broke. Why? The answer was simple. Because someone should. Grant moved fast after that. He sealed the windows with thermal shields. He handed Liari a small shock pistol. One shot. Use it only if you must. She looked down at the weapon. Her hands trembled. She hated the weight of it, the memories it brought, but she gripped it anyway. Grant set up 2 traps outside the door. Old tech, but clever. Enough to slow them down. Then he turned off all interior lights. They waited in shadows. Minutes passed, then footsteps, crunching snow. Muffled. Voices in a language Liari hadn't heard since the slave pits. She clenched her jaw. Grant stayed low. Rifle ready, body calm like he had done this 100 times, but she saw the tightness in his jaw. He wasn't calm. He was determined. The outer trap clicked. One scream, a burst of static. Then silence too. Left she held her breath. Another set of footsteps, heavier, slower, stopped, just outside. A voice spoke through a CUM device. "Give her to us," it said in broken English. "We saw you carry her," Grant didn't answer. "We won't kill you if you hand her over. She belongs to us." He still said nothing. Yari closed her eyes, heart thundering. Her whole body wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But the human stood between her and the door. He was waiting for them to try. The second trap triggered. Another explosion. Smoke and heat. Shouting now, Grant opened the shelter hatch. It's just enough to throw a flash device. Light burst through the snow like lightning. Then he moved fast, clean, trained 2 shots. One body fell. The third tried to run. Grant tackled him. In the snow, they struggled. Liari grabbed the pistol with both hands, heart pounding. Vision shaking, she aimed. The slaver raised his blade. Grant didn't see it. Liari, light, fired 1 shot. The blast hit the attacker in the side. He fell, twitching. Once, then still. Grant stood over the body, panting, blood on his jacket. Liari dropped the weapon. She sank to the floor of the shelter and stared at her hands. Grant returned, eyes scanning her face. "You okay?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. He knelt in front of her, not touching. "Just close. You saved my life," he said. Her voice was dry. "You saved mine first." Outside, the snow buried the attackers. No one would find them. Not now, not ever. Inside the shelter. Silence returned, not cold this time, but heavy with meaning. She looked at the man who risked everything for her. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't ask for anything, but she gave him something. Anyway, her real name, not the name they used. When they heard her, her birth name, the name she had never spoken since. The fall of her home, Grant repeated it softly, then nodded like it was. Promise. The battle was over. Snow fell gently now, soft and slow, covering the broken footprints around the shelter. Blood had melted patches into the ice, but the wind had already begun to hide it. Liari sat beside the heater, holding a warm cloth against Grant's bleeding shoulder. Her hands were steady, her breath was not. He should have been dead. He faced trained soldiers with nothing but courage in his bare hands. For her, she had seen people fight before, for power, for pride, for greed. But this man had fought for something else. For her right to exist. For her name, for her choice. Grant winced slightly as she tightened. "The bandage? You'll need real treatment," she said, voice quiet. "I'll live," he replied. "You shouldn't have done that." He looked up at her, eyes tired but calm. "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know," she whispered. That made it harder. She stood and moved to the window. Outside, the soldiers' ship sat half buried in the snow. The beacon they used to track her was shattered. The storm had taken care of the rest. No more footsteps in the snow, no more red lights. For the first time, in what felt like years, silence meant safety. She turned to him again. He was resting now. Eyes half closed, jaw still clenched from pain. Yet he didn't complain. He had given her food, warmth, protection, even his body as a shield, and never once asked her for anything. Not even her story, but now she wanted to tell it. She sat beside him and placed her hand gently on his chest. When my world fell, I lost everything. Family, honor, even my name. Grant opened his eyes and listened. I became a slave, she continued. I tried to escape once before. They caught me, beat me, branded me. I was nothing. I wanted to die. She looked into his eyes. But then I closed my eyes to end it and opened them in your arms. He said nothing. She leaned closer. I was ready to leave the world, but you made me want to stay. He reached up, his hand brushing her cheek, not with desire, not with pity,
Fight.
but with quiet understanding. You're not nothing, he said. You're the strongest person I've ever met. She looked down. You don't even know who I am. I know who you are now, he replied. That's what matters. The heater glowed softly. Outside, the storm died down, but inside, something new was blooming. Something slow and quiet and real. She leaned her head against his shoulder, careful of the wound. He didn't pull away in that moment. There was no war, no fear, no orders, just two survivors breathing the same air. Two people who were supposed to be enemies, now wrapped in silence and warmth. Later that night, Liar stirred from sleep. She found herself still resting against him, his arm loosely around her, his breathing deep and steady. She looked at his face, calm and at peace. Then she whispered something only the stars could hear. I won't leave you. Not now. Not ever. She had clung to life when she had nothing left. Now, she clung to him because he gave her back the one thing she thought she'd never have again. Hope.